some questions, introduce Kirk, ask some questions of him. After that, I would love for the audience to get involved and ask some questions as well. And then at the end of that, we would love for you to stay, network. I know that there's a drawing that someone's going to do. If you put your business card in at the front desk, we have some giveaways. And if you didn't, do it before we actually start to call the names. So, with further ado, I want to introduce Kirk Bradley. He is the chairman, president, and I have to read this because it is really long, I have to say. I don't know how you accomplish all the things you do in the matter of a day. Chairman, president, and CEO of Leamore Capital, an established regional real estate firm. The company invests in communities it develops, working with a diverse sector from retail, residential, and office to multifamily, self-storage, and flexible space, but develops in and also develops in a geographical specific location, the Research Triangle Park. So Kirk is actually also recognized as one of the North Carolina's most influential leaders in by Business North Carolina, and I can tell you why. Kirk, and you'll learn why as we learn more from him today, but he has spent his entire career in the family businesses of convenient retail, motor fuels distribution, real estate development, venture capitals. He also serves as the chairman and president of the Governors Club Development Corporation. He is also on the board of governors. He has earned his MBA in finance and real estate from Duke. He's actually spreading the love if you're going to learn more. The only one he's not sharing love with is UNC, I did notice. So we're going to have to get him over there. Anyway.
They waitlisted me.
Okay, I stepped in that one. His BBA is in Management Information Systems from the University of Georgia. His postgraduate studies include an M&A in training from Northwestern Kellogg School and Management Program for mid-sized businesses, again from Duke Fuqua. So, as I mentioned, I've had the pleasure of working with Kirk over the last few years in designing and implementing this space and then looking at innovation programming. I know that he, in talking and working with them, I know that he has had a vision not only here, but for the entire state of North Carolina. So I'm actually going to start there. I'm going to start statewide. I'm going to bring it in regionally, Sanford, and then here to Chatham Park and Mosaic. So, my first question for you.
Okay.
As member of the UNC system, speaking of UNC, of the UNC system, the Board of Governors, can you talk to us a little bit about the major initiatives or focus points that you as an individual really have a passion for, and why you may have, you were nominated, why you accepted the nomination?
Well, thank you, Cheryl, and thank all of y'all for coming today. It's fun to be here, and I appreciate all of you taking time out of your day to come and see what we're doing at Mosaic and 79 Degree West specifically. And we'll talk a little bit later about where that name came from, which was part of this collaboration with Innovate Carolina and the specific reason. But as it relates to the Board of Governors, I was of course honored to be on there. The university system is a real crown jewel for the state of North Carolina, which I always knew, and I will say since I've been on the board a little over 2 years now, and having traveled to all 17 campuses and getting to see how important each of those campuses, their unique characteristics and their importance to their local community and therefore the collective state has been really very enjoyable to me. I've learned a lot. In terms of specific things, I chair the Education, Planning, and Policy Committee, so if somebody wants to have a new undergraduate or master's degree in cybersecurity, that comes up through our committee and we recommend it to the full board for approval. So those are some of the things. We've been looking at policies that the university system had not looked at for 20, 30, even 50 years when the system was founded, there's been some policies that needed updating, one of which was like, there was no sort of thoughtfulness around non-tenure track faculty. And
Yep.
so we just approved some changes for that. That was part of a long process with the faculty senate committee from all the campuses. And so that's one thing. I've learned a lot about how important athletics are to enrollment and the whole sort of schools that a lot of schools like UNC Pembroke, Fayetteville State, and others. And so we worked with the General Assembly this past session and got $10 million, $1 million for the mostly HMSI schools, but some other of our small schools. And it was very important to help them with their athletic budgets that they were dealing with, increased costs because of travel, Title IX, and other things like that. So those are some of the things I've worked on. I would say it's important, and we're going to talk about innovation a little bit and how those tie together, but the one thing that I'll say that is very mundane that worries me, and is something that before I leave my service on the board, I would like to have a permanent solution, is we've got over almost 100 million square feet between all 17 campuses. That's a lot of square footage. And when I joined the board, there was probably a $6.5 to $7 billion backlog of maintenance. And there's just never been, the state is good at building things, and this is true, the system, as well as just general state buildings, but they're not great at sort of thinking through maintenance, and the process is clunky and budgeting. And so we've been very fortunate in the previous budget, not the one that just passed, but in addition to this one was the first time we really got significant dollars to sort of fix the backlog. But one of the things I want to see is a more sustainable way. And I know there's a lot of other things that get people's attention, but if you're a freshman at UNC Pembroke or Fayetteville State in August and the air conditioner doesn't work in your dorm, that's pretty important too. So we're roofs leak and things of that nature. So that's a big picture item. Again, not particularly top of fold kind of news, but some of the things that we work on.
Yeah, well, and it connects up, I can see how it connects up your real estate with the Board of Governors. So let me ask you this, I'm going rogue here, I hope that doesn't make you nervous. How long have you're from North Carolina, right? And have you lived in North Carolina all your life?
I'm actually not from North Carolina.
Oh.
I'm the first family member in multi-generations that is not from North Carolina. My mom and dad are both from Sanford, North Carolina, just down the road, and both sides of the family were from that area, and moved to Atlanta right before I was born. So I grew up in Atlanta and Marietta, Georgia, but then I moved here, moved to Sanford, and then eventually Chapel Hill in 1985. And so I've been actually fall of '84, I came back to North Carolina to go to graduate school, and I've been here ever since. So I feel like a North Carolinian, but I was not actually born here. So.
Yeah, well, I'm from Pennsylvania, and I've only been here for 10 years.
That's
And
right.
I feel like I'm from Cary, so that, containment area for relocating anyone more than 10 years, there you
That's right,
go.
you're a native.
That's right. So you have your family here. How many, you have daughters, sons?
I have two daughters. One lives here with her husband, and our first grandchild is about 2.5 years old. And then my youngest daughter just moved to New York City and works in the Freedom Tower. She's in public relations, works on the 68th floor of the Freedom Tower. And my wife actually went up there today and is visiting with her for a few days. So we've got one in a very big city and one here. They live in Newville.
So, but you've been here long enough in North Carolina to feel like a native, so I can see why there's a connection there. I'll go back to our script and talk a little bit about, North Carolina. We talked about the Board of Governors, we talked about this UNC system. And we have here, and we're very lucky to have a world-class university system, ranks very high with peer states, from a research and development funding perspective. And despite all of those advantages, North Carolina still ranks 20th in innovation. And I know that you have a passion, obviously, about innovation, and you believe that innovation is the connection to a better economy. Can you talk to us a little bit about NC Innovation and what you started there with a couple of your colleagues and what you're hoping to do there?
Yeah. So first of all, our country was founded on innovation. We innovated true Republican democracy. It took us several hundred years to perfect it. We're still working on it. We're improving it every year. And so it's at the heart and soul of why we became the largest economy, and in my opinion, why we will maintain the largest economy in the world. And so what we've been very good at the last few years in the university is creating terrific research enterprises. So we're second in research when you look at dollars with Duke and Wake Forest, NC State, UNC, and others. We really do very well with that. What we don't do is taking that research. The enterprises are built to go out and get the grants and do the basic research and some things. And we have had technology that's gone off campus. SAS is a big example of that. Wolfspeed is another example of a university-related technology that has turned into a very large enterprise. But we're not very consistent at that when you look at other places around the country. And so a group of us got together to kind of say, where are the problems? And part of it is we didn't have the regional networks to support companies as they were beginning to form and may need help, and also to help with research grants and collaboration. They're putting a lot of emphasis now with the National Science Foundation and NIH and making sure that you've got cross-pollination between a lot of universities. And I don't know about you, but I've been fortunate enough to go to presentations at all of our major schools, and when they like to talk about their collaborative partners, they're never anybody in state. You go to Duke and you'll see Stanford, you see all the great schools, and not necessarily high brand name schools, just different. And typically what that's happened, there's a network of students and faculty that have migrated to other places and they knew each other. And what we want to do is try and create incentives so that we would get East Carolina and A&T and NC State and Carolina working together to try and take some of this research, create more companies, and then hopefully have those companies stay and locate here and move out ultimately to a lot of our urbanizing and rural counties, so that you would get into tier 2 and tier 3 counties as we grew. So that was the premise. And one of the things, 2 areas we found out, there is a federal sort of chart called technology readiness level, and it goes 1 through 9. And there's something called the Valley of Death from level 3 to level 6. And that's where most companies, or most ideas, so research does not make it to the sort of innovation and job creation area. And so we are going to be doing, once we get sort of ramped up sometime in calendar 2024, start with annually giving out about $100 million of applied research grants. And those will be specifically targeted at those areas at our campuses to get them through that Valley of Death and get people from a 2 all the way to a 7, so that then you can get into the angel funding and all the things that ultimately lead to company formation. The other thing is we're going to fund regional networks. There's going to be one at Western Carolina, one at A&T, East Carolina, and UNC Charlotte. We may eventually add some others, but those 2 areas are what NC Innovation is going to do. And if you haven't read about it, it was a little controversial. The Senate wanted to put up $1.4 billion in an endowment, which would spin off in the calculation about $140 million a year, which is what it will take to fund the research or the hubs, and then the innovation hubs, and then the grants that we feel like are necessary. And this takes a lot of money to scale like this. We're looking at other states that are looking at $5 billion, $10 billion initiatives. But I will say, through a combination of factors, that got scaled down to $250 million this budget, and then next year's budget is another $250 million. We are hopeful that they will fund the additional $900 million to allow us to get the full endowment model we need. This is a multi-year process before you begin to see results, et cetera, et cetera. But we're very excited about it. We think it's going to make a big difference for the state of North Carolina. And there's several things that will happen. We hope to take UNC Charlotte and NCA&T are Research 2 institutions. We hope through this process this will allow them to beginning to expand their research such that they can become R1s. We have 2 R1s in the system right now, State and Carolina. If A&T is very close and that has to do with how many PhDs and some other things that you do. If A&T becomes an R1, it would be the first HBCU R1 in the country. And some of you may not know this, but the largest graduate of black engineers in the country is North Carolina A&T. So it's a very special school doing great stuff here in the system. We want to try and take all those campuses as well as our other sort of flagship campuses at Carolina and State and make them more productive. We've already paid for so much of it with all the research and faculty and staff, and so by taking this, we're actually going to, you know, allow our state to grow more and better jobs for all of our citizens. So that's the hope anyway.
So going Rogan, you may not be able to answer this question. I should actually know the answer to this question, but what does it take to go from an R2 to an R1? Do you know?
I do, and I can't tell it all off the top of my head, but it is a function of research dollars and faculty and sort of degree programs. There's a combination of things, but both state, or excuse me, A&T and Charlotte are the closest others in the system. And you know, there's a limitation. I mean, there's a cost to go into that, which increases the amount of resources that are needed each year. And so it's not like the goal should be to have all 17 campuses to be R1s. That isn't necessarily the goal. I think because of their geographic locations and missional sort of outlooks, that those two schools would be great to get up to the R1 level. So.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, changing gear a little bit. I know that you're from the Sanford area originally, or your family is, and you're actively involved in the Sanford Area Growth Alliance. Can you tell us what that is, and tell us about some of the projects that have been completed in Sanford and what impact they're having, or that do you intend for them to have?
So about 15 years ago, a group of private citizens in Sanford kind of came together. This was 2008. We didn't know that crash was going to happen in the fall, and we spent about a year. We started in January, and what we realized is that we were close to where a lot of great things were happening in the Triangle, but we weren't being recognized as such. We were not getting Department of Commerce. You know, we were not first on their list when they had new companies that were looking to relocate here, and there were a variety of reasons for that. So anyway, we did a big study, and through that we came up with a branding campaign and sort of worked the next few years trying to encourage our elected officials to pick this up and move it. And what we found is we didn't have the right elected leadership. So had a friend of ours, Chet Mann, that volunteered to run for mayor, and concurrent with that, the head of our economic development, and there was some conflict. It's a joint funding between the town of Broadway, city of Sanford, and county of Lee, and there was just some philosophical differences. The economic developer left, and we were really in kind of nowhere land. And so the same group of civic leaders got together with the elected officials, formed an MOU to say, we need to merge we're the smallest landmass county, Lee County, smallest landmass county in the state. It was formed taking land from Chatham and Moore County back in the early 1900s, 1913, I believe. And we need to sort of repurpose that into one organization, add some FTEs, and put us in a position to market the community better. And so that's where the Sanford Area Growth Alliance was born, which is a combination of economic development and the chamber. And so that was done in 2014. And we learned, well, we've got to have a marketing campaign. We learned how to do that. Realized we had to have products. We had to create a industrial park. And so Duke Energy has a program. We took advantage of that. We gathered a group of private investors to work with the municipalities to invest in that. So we've had a real public-private partnership. And I should say that Sanford Area Growth Alliance is funded 60% public, 40% private. Originally it was 60% private because we said the municipalities would say, if you achieve these goals, then we'll fund more. So we had to take the lead in that. The private sector did, but now so we've been able to work because we weren't big enough to have a private sector that could do it on its own, and the public sector wasn't able to do it completely on its own. So anyway, we formed that. We formed developed the Central Carolina Enterprise Park, and we got lucky because in 2018, a gentleman sitting right over there who's now Chatham County's EDC was the president of the Sanford Area Growth Alliance, and through some work, consultants, we were able to be in the, what's the guild?
Certified site program.
Well, we're in the guild, what's the meeting you were at? It's the Site Selectors Guild. So there's something called the Site Selectors Guild who work with all these companies, and then they'll invite certain economic developers, and through this consultant relationship, we were able to get Michael an invitation to go out there in Salt Lake City or something. Yeah, Salt Lake. And so he was standing with somebody from the North Carolina Biotech Center, so we're going out with the governor to go meet with this life science company in Oakland, and they need a building. He goes, well, we've got a building, which we did in Sanford. We created a spec building program with a joint venture between the private sector and the public, and so we were able to get what was then Audentes is now Astellas Therapeutics, which is a gene and cell manufacturer located there right at the front of our park. So concurrent with that, Pfizer, who had a campus, was looking for a place to put its global Center for Excellence for Gene and Cell Therapy Manufacturing. It came down to us in Massachusetts. I don't remember where in Massachusetts, but anyway, we won the bake-off. And so those two announcements happened bang, bang. So one of the best industries in the 21st century, the future of medicine, gene and cell therapy, are now located in Sanford. So we're a global hub. We recruited another company called Epzina that Pfizer actually bought their facility. And I like to tell this, so I want to tell this part of it, that they were in 4 places: Brussels, Boston, San Diego, and Sanford. So you always put those 4 cities together. They had some London operations too, but it sounds better to talk about those 4. But any event, so those are the things we've done and sort of taken that, and we moved it to Chatham County. Michael came over here. He had the mega sites here. And fortunately, that model worked with public-private. It opened, I think, the elected officials' eyes to how they could participate. And we're fortunate to have, the campsite in Siler City, the Moncure mega site, and then Chatham Park right in the middle, so you'd have a place for people to live. And so it's been pretty exciting to see what's happened in Chatham and Lee County, and probably unprecedented in the United States, as far as I know. We can ask Michael afterwards. He's been an economic developer for 25 years, worked in commerce before he started working in communities, and we've been very lucky.
Lucky, I mean, right time, right place. So really it takes like maybe 1 or 2 of those to then have it really catch on.
That's right.